we are really impressed with people who and actually some of you guys might be on the West Coast who are watching. So if you are on the West Coast, give us a shout out. We did find out that Matt doesn't drink coffee.
Okay.
Which
that's
we'll have to dig into that.
Yeah. that's a scandal on the morning show.
We're gonna have to pray for him and heal him of this sickness before the end to make sure he drinks more coffee. How was your weekend, sir? How was your week?
Good.
Yeah.
It's what, Tuesday? Yeah.
Yeah, it's hard coming out
Tuesday.
For a Monday off. Like everything.
That's true. Yeah, Labor Day. Yeah, messes you up. Feels like Monday.
I kept thinking today was going to be Sunday. Like
today was Sunday.
Well, yeah, because Monday felt like Saturday, and I'm like, oh, okay, we're gonna go back to church tomorrow, and just.
You just want to hit it again, huh? Go back, church round
number
2.
Yes. Let's go for it. Let's attack the gates. As they say. So we have some news that we're going to cover this morning, some fun stuff that's happening. We had a little bit of a pre-show debate about this. So for those of you who are on Disney Plus who haven't canceled cultured Disney yet, Mulan is...
We did that in the 90s, right? Southern Baptist. We canceled
right.
Disney in the 90s.
Yeah, and then we came back around.
Yeah, we can't. Well, we kept going. We just didn't talk about it.
You got to pay your Disney tax. Like, there's
no
raising your children without paying the Disney tax, right? And so Mulan was released, but in order to actually watch it, not only did you need to be paying your monthly subscription for Disney Plus, then you had to pay $30 on top of that to actually get to watch the movie. So my big question was, is the movie worth it?
Is it worth the $30 to watch the movie?
Yeah, I haven't seen it yet, so this.
We bought it. I haven't watched it. My kids watched it,
okay.
So we own it now. But here's the question: so we don't own it?
No,
we don't own it. We just paid $30, but we have it perpetually as long as we have Disney Plus.
I guess so. This
That's
becomes like the most expensive, awesome movie ever. I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know. So but you don't get. You're not paying monthly for Disney Plus just to watch Mulan.
Correct. I hope not.
Right. You're paying for the Disney Plus platform, and then you have special adding
access to this, right?
Mulan. But now here's the thing: Mulan is a theater release, so this is not like you're paying $30 for the DVD digital release.
Right.
You're paying at the
which is still cheaper.
Theater
right?
release. Well, for me, it's definitely cheaper. 6 kids, family of 8. That's like. The movie theater's, I don't know, $6,000.
Yeah, pretty much.
By the time you added popcorn, yeah.
By the way, popcorn. Praise God, we finally got my wife popcorn this past weekend. But the butter machine is shut down because of COVID.
What?
Yeah.
Well, then that's the end.
They hand you these little saucy packs or whatever of butter, which are like just wrong.
Is it hot?
No.
Oh, yeah. No.
It's not even in a warmer.
Shut down the movie theater.
But speaking of saucy, this is a nice random segue. For those of you guys who have been paying attention to the interwebs, there is a young man out of Nebraska, Lincoln, actually, Nebraska. His name is, I want to make sure I get this right, Ander Christensen, which I think is just a made-up name, but apparently not.
Christian Anderson.
Yeah, see? Thank you. But he moved it around. But he didn't pick the name. I'm sure his parents gave it to him. So
that's normally how it works.
Yeah, well, that's what I hear. In Lincoln, in the city council meeting, which are pretty dry and boring, first off, I would say. I've never attended one. So maybe they're like
maybe they're exciting, yeah.
It's insane. They're all doing, slip and slide and cha-cha lines and tango lines. Anyways, at this one, he decided to spice it up and bring a very pertinent, detrimental thing to our society and rallied against the boneless chicken wing.
Yeah. Now he doesn't, what's his thing? He doesn't want to call it. It's not really, he's not against the essence of a boneless chicken wing, just what we call it.
Correct.
Yes.
He says, and I quote, "We've been casually ignoring a problem that has gotten so out of control that our children are throwing around names and words without even understanding their true meaning. Treating things as though they're normal. I'm talking about boneless chicken wings." I propose that we as a city remove the name boneless wings from our menus, from our hearts.
From our hearts.
Yeah. One of my favorite parts in here is where he goes into the semantics of this and says, "I don't go to order boneless tacos. I don't go to order boneless club sandwiches. And I don't go to a boneless auto mechanic." We need to raise our children better. Our children are raised being afraid of having bones attached to their meat.
So he says they're spicy chicken nuggets, right?
Yeah, he does give some suggestions. So there's buffalo style chicken tenders, wet tenders, and saucy nugs, which you just can't say without laughing. First off.
So what you read in the comments? Are you a boneless chicken wing, or
Is this a new Enneagram?
or
Like,
a spicy chicken nugget? What do you think they're called? They should be called. Are they boneless chicken wings, or should they be called spicy chicken nuggets? Chicken nuggets and sauce.
No, I like saucy nugs.
Well, here's the question: how is boneless chicken wings different from what you get at the Chinese place?
Oh, are we saying like General Tso chicken?
Yeah, what's the difference? It's just sauce, right? The sauce is the only difference.
That's an excellent point.
So
they're wet chicken, smothered chicken.
Yeah.
See, in New Orleans you would say smothered chicken, but fun plug. General Tso chicken, not an authentic Chinese dish.
Boy, I'm shocked.
Yeah,
This is my shocked face. Now we will say best wings in town. My vote is the Korean style at Shades here in town. Korean style wings. If you haven't had them, try them. This is a great plug. If Shades would like to donate some
True.
for our free advertising, they are more than welcome to do so. 525 South 30th Street.
To just plug as well, Moe's Barbecue I think has better wings. Again, Moe's, if you're watching, you're a great part of the show.
Different style. Moe's Barbecue with the white sauce. It's pretty amazing. Yeah, those are great too. Great too.
So you can either way send those wings to 525 South 30th Street, Heath, Ohio 43056. We will love any wings you bring us, boneless or otherwise. We will eat them. All right, so
let's actually talk to our guests.
Let's
actually do a show.
We will redeem the time now. So straight from the interwebs of the West Coast, waking up bright and early to be on the morning show. We are so grateful to have Mr. Matt Mikalatos live and in person. Ooh,
that's just his picture.
We see a fun picture here. We might have to cut back. Oh, because it's 10:08. We're a little early. I think I know what happened. So normally, people who have coffee.
Okay.
So whatever he's doing that's not caffeine related, I think is what he's doing to stay awake. We will find out.
All right, we'll go to him when he's ready. He's apparently not ready. We needed to talk about wings more.
We can talk about some wings more. Fun times.
Why don't you tell us who he is?
Hey.
Oh, there he is.
Hey, welcome back, sir.
Hey guys, I couldn't hear you on this audio, so I was listening on the live audio, which is just slightly behind us.
Oh yeah, you're about a minute behind. Yeah, sorry about that.
You were still talking about spicy nugs.
Yeah, see, thank you. I prefer spicy nugs. What say you, sir?
I don't know. I think if we go down this particular chicken hole, it gets pretty crazy because, like, are they actually nuggets? Like, it's not like we're just scooping them out of the chicken. Like, they're like ground chicken something. I think they're ground. Well, I don't know. And what if you get a chicken tender that's not tender? What do you call it then? Like a chicken rubber?
Yeah.
I mean, it's a good question though. Are boneless chicken wings, is the meat actually from the wing of the chicken?
No, I think that's the point. Yeah, that's what got him upset in the first place.
All right, well, then I don't see how they can be called wings.
Hans Christian.
See, I think his name's made up. I think it's a moniker because, by the way, you should watch the video because he's got a great setup, skinny tie that's got some red print on it.
He looks very professional.
See, I was trying to figure out, is this performance art, or is he making some political statement, or just poking fun at his dad, who's apparently on the Lincoln Council?
Oh, it's impossible to say in this current internet world.
The mysteries that we will reveal, sir. Well, thank you again so much for coming on the show. You are an illustrious author. Someday, see, this is why I need more coffee. You've written a number of wonderful books. My favorites we've talked about off air. My Imaginary Jesus. By the way, I was going to say I was a little disappointed. You wrote the Swords of. You wrote one book, and then there was supposed to be a sequel. It never happened. I was a little disappointed about that one.
What's the book that needs a sequel?
Yeah, so it's a book called Sword of Six Worlds, which is a middle grade fantasy novel. I do have good news. There's a publisher who recently told me they're interested in talking about turning that into the series it should be.
Thank you.
So that conversation's still a little in our future, but yeah, that's a possibility still.
Well, I will send bags of peanuts wherever I need to, sir.
Okay, good.
Speaking of your books, a lot of people have talked about that you have this deft blend of theology and wit, and a little bit of snarkiness and sarcasm. So I'm just kind of curious about like how did all these things get stirred into a big pot? How did you get into the writing game?
Yeah, so I started writing seriously when I was in college. I had originally hoped to be involved in Hollywood in some way, and I was mostly doing acting at that time. And I realized in my college that the horrible thing about being an actor is you have to take whatever's offered to you. You don't really have a choice. And I didn't love that. So I started realizing that part of what I loved about acting was the creation of the story, the interaction with characters, all those things. So I was like, well, that's writing. So I started focusing on the writing part of things, so then I wrote a couple horrible things. I wrote a terrible novel. I wrote an awful screenplay. In fact, I threw the novel away. I don't have any copies of it still. I still have one copy of the screenplay, which I keep hidden. And I just pull it out every once in a while when I'm feeling sad, so I can look at it and go like, I'm better than this.
What's it called? We want to know what it's called.
Right. And then so professionally, I started writing short stories and articles, and that's when I started getting money. And my definition of professional author is like more than 5 cents has come to you as a result of your writing. So my first story I sold for $20, and I showed it to my wife, and she was like, "Oh, great." she goes, maybe you should just frame that because it's not worth cashing. And I was like, we're definitely cashing it. We are poor.
Oh yeah, that's pizza.
So I don't have that. But what happened is I was writing. I was writing articles, writing stories, and a publisher who I was connected to by then said, "Hey, why don't you send us a book proposal?" So I started working on one. And my thought at that time was, well, I should write something that'll get published, like something that's like something out there. So I started a book called Imaginary Jesus. And the original idea of it was it would be a book that was kind of like Blue Like Jazz. You remember that book?
Sure.
Only funnier. That was
Yes.
the idea. Like, what if Blue Like Jazz was very funny? And we were talking. So it was like this series of goofy essays. And essentially what happened is, to kind of fast forward, I got connected to an agent named Wes Yoder, who's my agent today. He was reading it, and he's like, I like it. He's like, but I get the feeling this isn't your kind of book. And I was like, well, my kind of book they're weird. And he's like, write me that. I want to see it. So that weekend, I wrote the first, 4 or 5 chapters of what became Imaginary Jesus, which is a comedy theology novel.
Yes.
And there are 2 of them in existence. I wrote them both. So one's the best one, one's the worst one, but I won't tell you which. And so I sent him the first 5, 6 chapters, and he wrote me back and said, I want to be your agent. And then he texts me.
Wow.
He says, don't talk to anyone else. And then my phone starts ringing. He's like, hello, it's Wes. I want to be your agent. This book's great. Can you write the whole thing? And I was like, yeah, I can. He's like, okay, good. We're on. And that basically my agent gave me the freedom. He said, be yourself, write about what you love, do something you want to see in the world, not something that already exists. And that was my introduction. And my publisher, I got to show you the cover. The original cover was this.
See, that's the one I
Jesus,
have. Yeah.
wow. Which I love it. The lady who did the cover, it's awesome. They were in a meeting, and she had this clip art of this man up, and she just started scribbling on it with like magic marker. And they sent it to me as a possibility, and I looked at it, and I'm like, I love this. Like, it made me laugh. I really enjoyed it. It got confusing because it's called Imaginary Jesus, and this was in the Christian bookstore back when we had lots of those. Some of the Christian bookstores were getting complaints from people saying, why do you have an atheist book at the Christian bookstore? And a lot of atheists started writing me who had picked it up thinking the same thing. Oh, and they get about halfway through and they're like, wait a minute, Christian book. So my publisher then had to, they repackaged it, right? They gave it a new cover, changed the name to My Imaginary Jesus, made it a little more obvious that we're saying, not that Jesus is imaginary, but that we all imagine a Jesus we prefer. So that's kind of the story. That's how it happened. And my publisher was great. After that, they were like, "What do you want to do next?" And I was like, "I don't know. Could we do a book about a werewolf who's going to church?" And they're like, "Sure." So that was the second theological novel, Night of the Living Dead Christian, which, yeah, there. You know what? There's not a lot of books like these.
No, there's not. It's just why I'm so glad you're writing them. They thought I was making up the title. I was like, no.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
True.
So on Imaginary Jesus, could you? Because I think that's a really good premise and a really good point that book makes. Could you give us a little bit more? Like, what is that point you're trying to make in there, and where do people kind of go wrong in imagining a wrong Jesus?
Yeah. So the core idea in Imaginary Jesus, the main theological question we're wrestling with, is how do we know the real Jesus? How do we know him? And how do we discern the places where our conception of Jesus is mistaken, right? Because everyone has an opinion of Jesus, whether it's someone who's Muslim or an atheist, all the way through all of the Christian expressions to fundamentalist Christians. Wherever you fall in that spectrum, everyone has an opinion. Was he just a good teacher? How did he feel about women? What was his, favorite kind of sandwich at McDonald's? We all have these ideas of who Jesus is. And so the book the way it works is it essentially says, what if you could see them? What if you could see people and interact with people's conceptions of Jesus? And so that's a lot of what the book is about, is this journey to discovery of how do we know the real Jesus. And along the way, I mean, it's very funny. It's definitely a laugh out loud kind of book. Like one of the endorsers said, I laughed so hard when I was reading this book that milk came out my nose and I wasn't even drinking any. So it's funny, but also it has this pretty emotional core of why maybe sometimes we are dishonest in our search for Jesus, or we settle for a Jesus that meets our preferences instead of the objectively real Jesus.
No, yeah, there's quite a really beautiful point at the end of the book that I don't want to give away because it's a great ending. But yeah, but that was going to be a question I was going to ask about, because Lewis did this, and a lot of other great Christian authors, to which we will put you in that pantheon, sir. What is it about fiction that allows us to talk about these heady theological issues in kind of this accessible way?
It's interesting when you read kind of scholarly studies about storytelling. They'll tell you this, when they look back at the earliest stories that we know human beings told, and the way they know this is they look at our existing written accounts of storytellers. So they'll look for a book or a document that has a story about storytellers. They say that the earliest human expression of story did two things. One is it was a way to communicate how to live in the world, how to be safe. So it'd be something like there was a man who went down to the water hole and there was a lion there also getting a drink, right? So it's a warning. It's a way to let people know, be careful of lions when you go to the water hole.
Right.
That was one. The second was that story was an exploration of our deepest questions. It would try to answer them. So that could be what are stars? What happens after we die? What happens if you disobey your parents? Those sorts of things. Story is designed, like for human beings, the reason we started telling stories was for these things. It's literally our tradition, going back to the beginning of humans telling stories, is that part of the purpose of story is to explore big questions. So it's pretty amazing, actually. And what I love about story versus essays or nonfiction is that a big part of story is engaging our emotion. And that's a really important piece. So Imaginary Jesus, for instance, you should laugh when you read it, and you might also cry at a certain point. There's some pretty poignant moments, some emotional moments. So there's real power in the midst of that. And something like you mentioned C.S. Lewis, something like Screw Tape Letters has much more staying power than if he had taken his same thoughts about the dangers of the spiritual world for a human being and just written them out in an essay. Because there's something compelling to us about the story itself, not just the content of the story.
That's a good point. I remember reading Peretti's book, This Present Darkness, and getting a much different perspective on warfare. Yeah, it highlights a certain thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, that's...
Go ahead.
I would just say one of the things I tell people is, particularly Christian authors, right? A lot of times Christian authors, many of them, are writing because they want to see some sort of transformation in their readers, right? And what I tell them is, nonfiction or fiction, they're both good. I write both. But if you think of your reader as like a walled city, and their heart, the thing you want transformed, is on the inside of the city, nonfiction is a battering ram that we're using to like break through the wall. It's like I have this I want to say to you, and this, and try to defend yourself, and you can't because my essay is so excellent, and you're just like pounding through. You break through the wall, you get access, hopefully, to transformation, right?
Okay.
Story is the Trojan Horse.
Oh, wow.
You roll up this big, beautiful horse, and you say, "Isn't this nice? Wouldn't you like this in your city?" And everyone's like, "Yeah, that's really pretty." And they pull it inside. It's not violent. You're not breaking anything. You're being invited inside for transformation. And this is true whether you're Christian or not. We can see various transformations in our own culture that have come as a result of story, whether it's Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Which Abraham Lincoln said it's the book that started the Civil War, because the woman, who was a Christian, who wrote it, painted a picture of slavery that convinced the North this cannot stand. So were other people writing essays at the same time? Absolutely. But that was the book, at least that Lincoln said, this changed things.
I was going to ask, kind of along the same lines, in this idea of the battering ram versus the Trojan horse, which is a great analogy. I know because with songwriting, right, there's this idea between like melody and lyrics, which comes first. And so you were talking about like the transformation part, right? So
yeah.
When you're writing your story, is it the idea for the story that comes first, or is it like the point of the transformation you're trying to get across?
I think it depends on the story for me. I've had stories that started with an image or a picture, which C.S. Lewis famously said the Narnia books just started with a picture of a fawn walking through a mythological fawn, not a deer. Walking through the woods, and it was snowing, and he had parcels with him, and it became this profound theological exploration, right? So I have books that have started like that, where I've had a character or a story that interests me. I've had books, so my book, The Crescent Stone, which is a young adult, I got it here, young adult fantasy novel right there.
Excellent.
Came out of a conversation with my publisher, where they were saying, can you write us a compelling fantasy novel that deals with all these questions we're wrestling with about race, ethnicity, power, privilege, like those sorts of questions from a Christian point of view? And I said, yeah, I can absolutely do that. So it's kind of a combination there, right? And I think that's I don't know if that's true for everyone, but it's true for me. I will say that I know Christian authors get really worried about, how do I put Christianity in my work? Right. Don't worry about that. Put Christianity in your life. If Jesus is in your life, that will come out in your work, your art, whatever it is. You don't have to spend a lot of time forcing it in. It'll come naturally. You can't help it. And probably a great example of that is the Lord of the Rings, right?
Oh, good point.
J.R.R. Tolkien, he specifically did not set out to write a Christian work. And yet you see these moments where the angelic figure who dies comes back to life and leads an army to save them from doom.
Hold on, there's a lot of spoiler alerts that you're dropping right here.
Well, I mean, it is like 15
like
years old. I think we passed the grace period of spoiler alerts.
When a book's older than you don't get spoiler alerts.
It's a good point though, because like right now I'm reading The Hobbit with my boys, and
Yeah.
and it gets to spark a lot of conversations about grace and sacrifice, and yeah, it's a good point. So one thing that Dave and I have been talking about is there's a lot of YA novels that are floating around, and everyone reads them, and then there's kind of a dearth, so to speak, within the Christian fiction community. Like, what would be some recommendations you have as far as like why has the YA authors kind of not seeped into that world, so to speak?
In the
So why are
in
there
the
not
fantasy
Christian
world,
young
Yeah.
adult novels?
Yeah, yeah, that's
You
my
know, but
translation.
I think Christian young adult novels, there's actually a decent amount of them. There's so Tyndale, which is my publisher, has a variety and a growing number of them. There's Blank, which is from Thomas Nelson. There's Waterbrook Multnomah. So there's places that are publishing them.
Cool.
I think it's gotten a lot harder to find the diversity of books that exist because of just the reality of the book market right now. So one of the best things you can do is reach out to some people to point you toward those books. I do think in publishing in general, as we move into different audiences and different places, the young adult is a great example where the young adult market has really exploded in the last several years to where a lot of adults are reading young adult. It's got its own big section at the bookstore, if you have bookstores and are allowed to enter. And yeah, you're right. When you walk down those aisles, you don't see as many Christian books in there. But I think again, there actually are a decent number of Christian people writing in the secular YA market, some of whom are my friends. Yeah, so they're out there. They're out there for sure. And I would say this too, man, if you're not seeing the books you want in the world, the best thing you can do is write them, I think. Like, if you have any interest at all in writing, that's the way to go. And if you want it, then probably others want it too, is my experience. At least somebody. There's somebody out there that wants it. Just like spicy chicken nugs.
See?
Somebody wants that change.
I'm going to read The Werewolf That Goes to Church today. That's where you got me hooked in.
So I know you recently started your own. You're pretty good about interacting with your fans on Facebook, and you recently read the entire Crescent Stone every day. It was kind of a daily and quarantine thing. So what was that like reading it? Was it hard? Was it awkward? Like, what was that like?
No, I loved it. So I would do Monday through Thursday. I would read a chapter every day from the book. And then on Fridays, I would interview an author. So I'd bring, or someone, like someone from my publishing team or an author. And it was super fun. Just had a great time. We had this core group of people that came in every day. So there were probably, 20 people that were coming every day, coming with their families, whatever, to hear the next chapter. So it was this fun community too. And then of course we'd have another, 100 people watch at some point. But I think what was fun about it for me was there was the community experience. So writing a novel is pretty isolated depending on the place in the process you are. Whereas storytelling, I think, is meant to be communal.
Right.
So it was fun. It had that communal aspect. People were asking questions, were interacting, saying, "Oh, I love that part." So that part was really fun. And I think the other thing is, I wrote The Crescent Stone when a very close friend of mine was dealing with terminal cancer, and she passed away before the book was done. She had always read all my books before, and I actually dedicated the book to her. So there's a lot of the themes and things that are being dealt with in the book kind of overlap with the emotional state I was in at that time. So there's a character who has terminal disease in the book, and some issues related to that intersect with the plot. So I think there was, it was emotional for me rereading it. And there were, if you watch some of the later chapters, particularly, you'll see these moments I'm like reading and I'm like trying not to cry while I'm reading, which, yeah, I don't know. It was, and I was writing the third book. So it's a trilogy. I was writing the third book while I was doing the readings. So that was kind of cool too, to be reminded of like all the little things I promised in the first book. Like, don't worry, this will pay off. And I was like, oh, I got to fit that in somehow. So yeah, you don't want to lie to your readers. Yeah, so it was really fun. I enjoyed it.
Well, sir, we are going to move to my favorite section of the interviews where it's called Fast Five. I'm going to ask you 5 completely unrelated questions to what we've been discussing. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Do you need
Was that the first one?
4 yes. Yeah, very good. 4 more to go. All right, so, wow, I just realized there's only 3 in here. I'm missing 2.
Well, you're going to have to...
I'm going to come off the cuff. All right, so here's the first one. In the golden age of cartoons, Saturday morning was the gauntlet, right? This is before Netflix. You had to navigate your way, what you were going to... So, what was the order that you used to watch your cartoons? Like, where did you start? Where did you end up?
So this is pretty complicated because I have 2 little sisters, and they are twins. And our rule in our family was you had to take turns picking.
Oh.
So I might get first pick, and then my sisters would get 2 and 3, and then I would get number 4. So really, it was more of a strategy game of which show do you really want to see. It wasn't like, how are you going to watch them all? It was like, well, at 9 I want to see this, and at 11:30 I want to see that. So there was a lot of bargaining involved, a lot of kind of conniving. Also, like, if I don't choose now, in an hour it'll be my turn. And also, like, the Smurfs was like an hour and a half or something. So you had to be like, you only get half an hour when you pick the Smurfs. So that was a rule we had to put in place. But I loved Spider-Man and His Amazing Friends was one I loved.
Okay.
Thundar the Barbarian, if you want to get
that's old
really
school
out there with the weird ones. If you've never heard of Thundar, you need to go look it up on YouTube right now and just watch the 30-second intro.
Yes, that's a
Hanna-Barbera. Like a 3-minute intro. That was one of those old Hanna-Barbera cartoons.
Yeah.
They always did the races where there was like every cartoon character known to man would like race or something. Hanna-Barbera.
Oh yeah, what was that one?
Oh yeah. The wacky races. Mm-hmm.
That one had the Herculoids in it. I remember that. Remember those guys? Space Ghost.
Oh yeah, Space Ghost. Yeah.
The original Space Ghost, not the talk show Space Ghost.
Not Space Ghost Coast to Coast.
Right.
That's right. Johnny
The
Quest,
original.
all those guys.
All right, sir. Speaking of some superheroes, question number 2: which superhero team would your family most identify as?
That's a good question. Well, I don't know. I could go pretty out there. We might be kind of Doom Patrol, to be honest.
That's fantastic.
Reaching out there. We're all like pretty unique individuals that are a little off the beaten path, I think. So yeah, that might be us.
So we could.
We're fighting for our individuality in a world that doesn't understand us. That's what I'm trying to say.
That is an excellent.
I'm Googling to see what Doom Patrol is, just to tell you the truth.
I assumed you would have gone like Guardians of the Galaxy, but that's impressive.
I used to work at a comic book store. I can go pretty deep on the comic knowledge.
Well, that's why I threw this one in here, was to see which way you would go. Would you go surface level or how far down you'd go?
I debated because my kids really love the Avengers, which is their sort of like most kids right now. But I thought, well, and it has some of that aspect, right? But Doom Patrol, that's when you're getting a guy with a robot body and a human brain and a kid who can turn into animals, and there's all sorts of good stuff in there.
Well played, sir. Question number 3, this is a little bit more esoteric. If you're clean when you get out of the shower, why are the towels dirty once they're used?
Well, I suspect it's because it's wet. That's my theory.
Sure. These are just one of the great mysteries that roll around in my head at 2 a.m.
Yeah.
So next question. Question number 4. What is the strangest thing you've done to fix your writer's block?
Strangest thing I've done to fix my writer's block. Okay, when I was in college, my professor, who's a guy named Percival Everett,
You're making that
amazing.
up.
No, that's like a that's
No.
a character.
That's a
real.
Lord of the Rings wizard. You're making that up.
yeah.
No, that's real. He's an amazing guy. He teaches at USC now. Amazing author. I came into him and I told him I had writer's block, and he said he was a hard man when it came to writing. He goes, "No, you don't." And I was like, "Yeah, I do." He's like, "You don't. Don't say that again." I was like, "I do. I have writer's block." And he goes, "Okay, I want you to turn in a 30-page story to me by tomorrow or you fail." I was like, 30 pages? And he's like, "Yeah." And I was like, 30, like a news story? And he goes, "I don't know why you're sitting here asking me questions because tomorrow's going to come early." And I was like, "What?" So I literally ran to my dorm and I like took all these notes I had on random things and dumped them into a document, tried to make a story out of it. It was horrible. It was like an awful story. And the next day I show up with it. He starts reading through. He goes, "It's not all garbage. There's a couple good moments in here." And he says, "Never tell me you have writer's block again. You never do. Just sit down and write." So that's kind of my thing now. When I don't ever say I have writer's block. I never feel like I have writer's block. I'm like, right now what I'm writing is not good, but that doesn't mean I stop writing. Yeah.
Wow.
I love that guy.
That's fantastic. I thought it was going to
it
go
works. It works. I guarantee you, if you feel like you have writer's block, just you have a 30-page paper due to me tomorrow.
That is motivation.
And I bet the writing inspires good writing. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Once you're going, and I think for a lot of artistic people, this is true. You might be like, "I don't have any ideas." I guarantee you, if you settle down on a certain idea and start just pushing through it, that your brain will be like, "Here's 6 more ideas." Like, it's your brain is so lazy. It's always trying to trick you out of doing the thing you're doing. So yeah, absolutely. Just get started. It'll take off for sure.
cool. All right, we're gonna see what Rob's number 5 off the cuff question is.
Number 5 off the cuff. So we're gonna put you in an elevator. Normally I go music, but I want to dive more into your comic book. So if you're stuck in an elevator because it's broken down, what's the worst comic book hero that you'd be stuck in an elevator with?
The worst comic book character to be stuck in an elevator with. Oh man, there's a lot that would be bad. Probably the worst would be the X-Men villain, the Blob. Do you know this guy?
Yes.
Yeah, you shouldn't get on an elevator with that guy, for sure. And he's a bad guy. That's the other thing. You don't want to be stuck on an elevator with any of the bad guys. Runner-up might be the Legion of Substitute Superheroes guy whose name is Arm Fall Off Boy. His arm just falls off. And I just think that's really entertaining for the first 30 seconds. But after that, what are you going to talk about?
Hopefully that wasn't this interview today.
No, I'd much prefer either of you in an elevator.
That is what we're shooting for.
That's right. You made it. You did it.
Yes.
Oh man.
Well, congratulations. You have made it through the Fast Five. Well played, sir. Thank you so much for coming on the show and being a part of the morning show. Anything you want to plug before we head out of here?
Yeah, if you can spell my name, you can find me on the internet. I know that's a high bar, so I'll spell it for you. It's Mikalatos. Anyone with that last name is directly related to me, and they'll be glad to push you the right direction. But yeah, if you go to Mikalatos.com, you can find my website, which has links to all my YouTube channel, my Twitter, my Facebook. I do love to hear from people, so don't feel afraid to send me a note or shoot me a question. And if I don't get back to you right away, it's because I'm busy and disorganized. So don't feel afraid to keep shooting me notes if you don't hear back. I probably just missed it or put it off too long and forgot.
One of my
So
And we just added your Facebook page to the comments of this video. So
Awesome.
it'll be a quick,
Thank
easy
you.
way for everybody to find it and find those books. Yeah.
yes, please go out and read these books. They are fantastic. They're hysterical, and they're very poignant and getting to learn some really cool stuff. So thank you
Yeah.
again so much, sir, for coming on the show. And you were officially a friend of the show, and the good friend of the show.
Hey.
Yeah.
Oh, I made it a good friend. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir.
Yes,
and
thank you.
We will talk to you soon.
Thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Have fun.
Bye-bye.
I'm gonna stop my video now.
All right. He's pretty funny.
That was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yes. Yeah, that was a great. That's gonna live in my mind forever. And then I was like, what if a werewolf went to church? Like that's. I've gotta find that book.
Because it's not
today.
metaphorical. There are a lot of werewolves that come to church.
That is awesome. Good stuff.
The premise in that book is basically all the internal things, the emotional things, whatever the people are, it's on the outside.
Yeah.
And so you have a vampire in there, you have a werewolf, you have a whole bunch of other classic monsters. It's great. It's a great one. And actually, if I remember correctly, the werewolf is actually the pastor
Okay.
of the church, if I remember correctly. It's
mean-
been a while since I've read it.
Beards are in, so that's it.
Yeah, sure.
Very
You know,
werewolf
I
look.
howl at the moon all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So, what is our table talk for today, sir?
All right, we talked a little bit about. So there's an interesting article on that Tim Challies wrote, kind of about Proverbs, and the premise is: what if when Solomon's fool created a social media platform? So as you read through that wisdom literature in the Bible, Proverbs, even Ecclesiastes, you're gonna find the fool referenced a lot, and there's this sort of representation of a fool. And so Challies comes along and says, well, what would it look like if the fool from Proverbs was on social media?
He is. It's everybody on social media, right?
Yeah, I mean, the full social media, what are some of it, just kind of his points just to kind of think about? And I think the point is just for us to think about when we're engaging online, because in the last 10 years, the online world has become the real world, right?
Yeah.
I mean, we're having conversations, we're meeting people, we're connecting with groups and all kinds of things online. And so to remember that when we step into that world, we still want to engage and act as a wise person, as a believer in the right way, and not as a fool would.
It's like the new public square for us to speak into, and unfortunately, social media becomes an echo chamber of just wanting to hear. And so, like you slowly start just paying attention to people who only say things that you want to hear. You say things that you know what I mean. Like it just keeps circling around.
Yeah. So one of his points, the fool would provide the full social media would provide the context in which a person could destroy himself through hasty, ill-considered words. And he talked about Proverbs 13, the one who guards his mouth protects his life. He who opens wide his lips comes to ruin. And so the fool is going to say things that are going to destroy themselves, their character, their testimony, the representation of Christ even.
And this is not to say that social media is bad.
No.
Right?
It's a tool.
It's the tool, but it's
Right.
unfortunate what we do with the tool as fallen human beings.
Right. The full social media would emphasize the quantity of people its users follow rather than the quality. So about being more popular and trying to make it more about that than actually just trying to make sure you're putting out good content.
Yeah. Sorry. No, Wicked stuck in my head now. The musical, popular,
Okay.
the song. Sorry.
Why?
It's my wife's favorite musical, so I have Kristen Chenoweth singing "Popular" in my head right now. Just
This is what we have to deal with here on the morning show.
Judge shaking his head just in disdain and disgust, which I'm used to at this point after knowing him for 8 years.
The full social media would cause its users to interact with foolish people rather than only wise people. And so there's so many warnings in Proverbs and Ecclesiastes of avoid the fool. And, are we, is social media helping us do that, or are we engaging the fool? The full social media would encourage wise people to spend time responding to foolish people. Proverbs, do not speak in the hearing of a fool, for he will despise the good sense of your words. That don't cast your pearls before swine. That's a temptation on
Yeah.
social media, right? Is to cast your pearls before swine, and once you've done that, the fool has you in his clutches. You've done what he wants you to do.
Right, it's the adage about don't get in a wrestling match. It's like arguing with somebody's like wrestling with a pig. You're both going to get dirty, but only the pig's going to like it.
Yeah.
That's the little Rob's translation of.
Well, and that ties into this next one. The full social media would allow its users to witness other people's disputes and arguments so they could join in.
Why?
Right, and think about how often that is. What would be a healthy, good conversation over coffee in person turns into a pile-on of random slander and
it's like the high school fight, right? It's like two people and now they're circling around and they're just kind of hyping up the whole experience when an excellent cup of coffee would solve many more problems.
Yeah, and a full social media would make success with the platform dependent upon responding to others, responding hastily, and responding without the social cues that come through hearing a person's voice or seeing a person's face.
It's just the quick, guttural, visceral response instead of taking a moment and just, okay, what do I actually need to respond in this moment? Like, it's so quick, rapid fire.
And I think it has a tendency in those arguments to dehumanize people.
Sure.
And to be arguing with someone without realizing how they're saying it to you or what they mean by it, and it can just get, bad quickly. The full social media would permit no cooling down period between receiving an insult and responding to it.
Yeah. And it's like there's the anonymity of social media provides for that, right? When you're face to face and you're having a conversation,
right?
It's a much more an intimate thing. So you respond usually better when it's face to face, but in the interwebs of social media, you can say whatever you want and lob that hand grenade, and then it becomes just this bloodbath. And you, like you said, you're objectifying an argument instead of the person who has said it. Like, Jesus had all sorts of random things thrown at him by all sorts of shady people, and he always responded in a very deft way. It's a master. I mean, obviously he's Jesus, he's God, but when you just break down how he responded to people who challenged him or said unsightly things, he always responded with love and wisdom. But just go back through. If you want a master class on how to respond to social media, obviously follow Christ, embody Christ, but like there's so much great stuff in here where he responds to people.
Yeah, and the full social media would be focused on getting praise, right? About getting likes and comments and praise. And so, I think the point he kind of makes in here, and he's actually, you can read the article, he's actually sort of, Twitter is in what's mind here, which you may not have, but he's sort of saying if the fool were to make a social media platform, it probably would be Twitter, just because of the way the responses and things are on there. And he says it's not intrinsically evil, it's not bad, it's just the way in which we use it. And so many of our controversies, quote unquote, that happen in denominational life or church life are really driven so much by social media, which is not a good thing. So I guess his point and our point this morning is use it wisely. Use these tools God has blessed us with for wisdom and for ministry and to reach people, to help people don't fall into the traps of the fool, and using it for self-promotion and self-glory and divisiveness.
Yeah, any of these tools can be used to share the gospel, from Facebook to Twitter, the internet in large, right? Like this is an amazing tool, but we have to, just as much we need to redeem the time, we need to redeem the tools that God has given us, and use them for his glory, not for our own self-glory.
Yeah, and our world is out there. So if you say, I don't have anybody to share the gospel with, anybody to minister to, the world is on social media.
Yeah.
And so it's a great place to start a group, start connecting with people, find ways to begin to connect with people and be able to minister to them and be a blessing to them. So
love one another.
Yes.
That's our theme? What's our...
this month is confess to one another, which we've kind of everything going on. But
this is good. So if you have done some foolish things on social media, this is a great time to confess, redeem.
Confess to one another, yeah. So next week
we have Mr. Ronnie Martin, Pastor Ronnie Martin from Substance Church, and I always get this wrong.
Ashland?
It's Ashland, Ohio.
They got two campuses.
But the other one's in Worcester, so I always want to start with Worcester because Worcester's just fun
How
to
do you say Worcester in Ohio? Is it Worcester?
I think it's Worcester.
Okay.
I don't know. I'm not from Ohio.
Because you got Worcester in Massachusetts.
See, and that's the way I want to go.
But it's spelled like Worcester sauce, but it's still Worcester.
Worcester sauce. That's fun.
Is that how you say it?
I always get it wrong. It's like Worcestershire.
It's Worcestershire.
Worcestershire.
I got to put my Pennsylvania Dutch on. Say
there is one that's Cester. That's not the same. That's a different. Is that the same sauce or a different sauce?
I think it's.
We're gonna have to look this up.
It's spelled Worcestershire.
Oh, okay. Worcestershire.
Shire, like the Hobbit?
Yeah, it sounds like something in Lord of the Rings. Like
It's
the next shire over is Worcestershire.
So it's Hobbit sauce. That's what we're gonna call it from here on out. Give me the Hobbit sauce for my
But
steak.
Massachusetts is spelled like that, but it's Worcester.
So Ronnie Martin's coming on the show. He's a wonderful church planting pastor there in kind of a rural area of Ohio. So he's going to come on and talk about that, as well as his time in the CCM industry. And he's the host of the Happy Rant podcast, which is an excellent podcast for those of you who are looking for things to listen to. So we're excited to have him on.
Yeah, and then after that, on the 22nd, we've got the creator of the American Gospel. And so if you haven't seen that documentary, go check it out. We'll talk to him, talk about the why and how God has used this. It's really exploded. A lot of people have seen it. It's had a lot of great impact. And so we'll talk about that, the American Gospel. And then we wrap out the month with Dr. Jason Allen, president of Midwestern Baptist Theological Seminary, talking about the church and they've got a big emphasis on for the church, so we're going to ask him some questions about what is some of the challenges he sees that the church is facing right now, and just some different things like that.
So definitely keep tuned for September. We are here every Tuesday morning at 10 a.m. Make sure to like us, follow us on Facebook, as well on Twitter. You can find us there. And make sure you also check out the comment section for our special guest today, Mr. Matt Mikalatos. Please buy his books. They are amazing and poignant and funny.
Yeah, and if you enjoyed the show today, please share. It's a good way to get the word out and let other people see it.
All right, guys, we will see you next Tuesday.
Have a good week.